All right. Now we'll all be on record. All right. Okay. Never happened before. Okay, so just looking at the system, there's going to be two kinds of procedures that this system is using. Ones where they will pin on in a Mayfield, or ones where they will use the EM equipment or electromagnetic. So first I'll show you the pinning or optical, and then I'll show you the EM. And when I say optical, you'll look, this system is comprised of two carts. If you flip this little lever up, there's one on each side. These can pull apart. This one with that looks a little beefier and has the articulated monitor arm is called the main cart. And this one with this dual-eyed camera on it is called the camera cart. This is what looks at the instruments with the little reflective spheres on. Like the brain, yes. This is going to work, same principle as the brain. Okay. So, for an optical procedure, or an EM procedure for that matter, once you hit the power button that you might be able to see is outlined in blue right now, when it's turned on, you will get to this screen.
And when you get the cart, they are like they're stored together.
Yeah, they're stored together.
You won't find the two pieces separately. It's one big cart together.
Like a shunt or
electromagnetic.
Yeah, or any ENT procedure is usually going to be EM.
But so far, the 3 times that we've used this recently, we have only used this being part.
So EM procedure is what you've been using? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So once you get to this login screen, it's a super secret password, stealth, all lowercase. The keyboard is on screen. I've also written the password right there for extra security. And if for some reason this on-screen keyboard isn't working, one thing to note, it is mirrored on the other monitor as well. So I can type on here, or I can type on here. If for some reason you need to get a physical keyboard, this little door that's on the front of the system right here will have a keyboard hidden in it. And there is a USB cable that's used to plug that in inside this little drop down cubby right here. That is if for some reason you cannot use the on-screen keyboard. But I will enter our password. And once we are completely logged in, you will see an option for 3 different types of procedures: a cranial, an ENT, or spine. Right now we'll do an optical cranial case. So you tap cranial, and you are presented with a list of profiles. Those profiles are for surgeons. It will have the procedures that they'll do, and then the options that they have selected for those procedures. There's different things like if you want to use the foot pedal or how the view looks. So for whatever surgeon, choose, or you can just select standard profile, which is just sort of the default.
Yeah. It's got her name at the bottom.
All right. Yeah, so we'll choose her. And then once you make that selection, you are presented with a list of procedures. One thing to note, so for example, we've got tumor resection. We've got 2 options for that, optical or EM. Right now, we're going to do the optical, where we'll be using the camera and the non-disposable instruments. So we'll choose tumor resection optical. That little thing, that beep you heard was the camera initializing. And once we get our surgeon and our procedure selected, it will bring you to the images task here where we will be downloading images. Realistically, this will probably be where your setup of this has stopped. In my experience here, a surgeon or a resident will come in and download those images. But just for everyone's education, I'll teach you how to download it. So if they're using a disc, you'll want to get that from radiology, or they might bring it. But 99% of the time, I believe we're pulling from the PACS network. This is set up on a wirelessly, so it should just connect wirelessly. If not, there should be a PACS port in each room, and we can plug in with this purple Ethernet cable that's stored in this little cubby on the front as well. And there is an Ethernet port on one side of the system here. There's only, all of these cables only plug in one location. You can't plug them in the wrong location. So the Ethernet port plugs in the little Ethernet port there. So realistic, or ideally though, it will be, do I need to move forward a little bit for the recording?
I think we're okay.
Okay. Ideally, we will be using the wireless network. And I've put the search convention up here on the top here for an image search. It is going to be last name, and then the little caret key, the little triangle, and then first name star. That star would be a wild card. So if you're searching for Smith, caret J, you'll return John Smith, Jane Smith, Joe Smith, all like, or if you type in Smith, caret Joe, it will only return Joe Smith. So I don't have the name of a patient to search for, but it would be, yeah.
Oh.
So you'll see a little searching for DICOM down here, and then you'll be greeted with a list of scans that we can download. Unfortunately, for some reason at this facility, typically it has like the name of the scan, like, oh, it was a stealth CT or a brain lab MR or something like that. For some reason, it doesn't list that name, so you just kind of have to go by. There's a little column over here that says what it is: MR, CT. I'm not sure what a CR is, but we'll be looking for MRs and CTs. So let's go ahead and just click on the first one. All right, so ideally, when you are downloading an MR or a CT, you would want an MR that has something like 176 or 195 or like 170 plus slices. And when you select one of these scan series here, and it drops down, it will tell you right here the number of slices. Like, so this one right here, axial T2 whole brain has 219 slices, or these MP range of 133. Ideally, those would be the type that you download. And again, this is probably something you won't be doing, but just in case someone's like, hey, pull these images, you have the tools to do that now. So MRs, 150, 170 plus slices, or CTs, similar, about 200 slices for CTs. Now the difference is CTs, a lot of times facilities will use a stealth or brain lab CT for registration, because the soft tissue nature of the scan gets you a better registration model for when they're registering on the patient. So that's why we'll do both MR and CT. So let's go ahead and just download one. It looks like someone's already downloaded some. So you just click the download and it'll show you the little, the progress over here. Once we have that downloaded, we'll have a list of the scans that have been loaded on the Stealth over here, and you select the number that you want. If you select more than one, this little blue box down here will say merge images. If you only select one, that little blue box will say plan. The thing is, if you have more than one selected, you go through a task where they merge them together to make sure everything is lining up between the scans, so that when they register, we know that everything, when they swap between the scans, everything is lined up. But if you're only doing one scan, you don't have to do that merging process. And again, this is all something that is probably after you are completed with it. This is where they will take the ball and run. What we have done is we've logged in, we have selected a surgeon and a procedure, and then gotten them to the point where they can select their scans. If the surgeon uses a foot pedal for navigation, there are a couple of different ways to do it. You can either use this foot pedal, step on it, and it allows them to interact with the system. So they step on it like a car accelerator and do their tracing for the registration, or they'll pause and resume navigation. Or we have something called stationary probe, where we don't use the foot pedal at all, and we just hold the probe stationary for 2 seconds and it does what they want. I'm not sure which way she likes to use it, but
So far, we've just staring.
okay,
Stuff.
okay, gotcha. All right. Yeah, so if for some reason we need the foot pedal, it's usually system on the side somewhere, or there's a little cubby back here that it could be wrapped up and stored in. And again, it plugs into the side, this input output port back here, and it will only plug into one spot. You can't plug it into the wrong spot. So that is getting set up with an optical procedure. And again, optical will use these. This one is the reference frame, which will attach to this arm, which then attaches to the Mayfield.
Let's call Sarah.
There are sterile versions of these. There's going to be a Medtronic sterile navigation tray. There's also these unsterile ones that live with the Stealth. I believe so, yes.
Yeah, it's up here.
I think, yeah, I think they only have one or two. So the navigation tray will have one of these. It will not have one of these. These are normally, this is always unsterile. And it will also have a couple of variations of this. There's a smaller one called a scope probe for when they're using it under a microscope. It's shorter so they can fit it underneath the microscope. And then there's one that that is just this blue part. It doesn't have the pointer, and that's for a optical catheter placement. There's a little disposable piece that screws on at the end of it. I don't think we do those. We have that capability. They have not purchased that spring or that instrument set. There are ones where you can take any instrument and there's like a little thing that looks like these geometric designs that clamp onto an instrument. You can use that as a pointer, but we haven't purchased one. So these are the ones that live with the stealth are used for registration. They'll set it up, they'll put the arm on, they'll put this on the arm. They'll register the patient and then they'll take this part off, but leave the arm locked in place. And then they'll do their prep and their draping, and then we'll take the sterile ones out of the sterile tray and put it on there. So that is an optical procedure with these reflective spheres. For an EM procedure. Normal drapes, what they'll do is they'll wrap it around it, and maybe they'll put like a rubber band around it. And then they'll take a pair of scissors or a scalpel and slice it and open it for this to screw onto the arm. In theory, this punctures through the drape, and then we don't need to cut, but 99% of facilities will do that and will cut, because if you have a little bit of a bunched up drape underneath this thing, if this is even off by a fraction of a millimeter from when they registered, the navigation is going to be inaccurate. So they'll do that slicing and then put this on that arm. Then sometimes they'll wrap like a blue towel around that base or put these IO band or something. So that is an optical procedure. Everything that we have done up to this point is the exact same for an EM procedure, except that you don't necessarily need this camera. A lot of times we just keep them together for the sake of it being simple, but also if you leave the camera cart where it's stored, the system's only half the size. So pros and cons. In order to unattach the camera cart, there is a green ended, double-ended cable that is called a cart interconnect cable. You can unplug it from either side and then leave the camera cart in its little storage. And again, each end is the same, so it doesn't matter which end plugs in where, and you can't plug that cable in the wrong spot. There's only one place to plug it in on the camera cart, and then anything that it has like a green sleeve on it, the little slot that it goes in is green. There are orange ones that are for some different instrument that'll plug in that you don't have, but the places where they plug in are colored. So the EM emitter here, this has a blue one. It plugs into the blue slot over on this side. The little box that the EM instruments plug into has a smaller plugs into the green one over on this side. I don't know what it shows green for two different ones, but they don't ask me my opinion. Science. So when we're doing an EM procedure, and so let's back out. If you ever need to exit the procedure for some reason, there's a little menu button up in the upper left. It's got 3 horizontal lines and it says Medtronic right next to it. That will bring up a menu where you can log out, power down, exit procedure. Now, anytime you exit that procedure, you're not losing anything. Anything that they have done, planning wise, maybe they've made a model or they've already registered. If you exit that procedure and it looks like, oh, everything's lost, it isn't. Everything is always saved. Even if you have to power down the system and move it, or like the power outage and the battery, this does have supposedly a 20-minute battery backup. Sometimes your mileage may vary. If you have to power it down and boot it back up, anything that has already been done with that patient is automatically saved. So if they've already registered and we need, so for example, if you choose the wrong procedure starting, say they're doing a biopsy, there's a special biopsy needle for when they're doing a biopsy that instrument isn't attributed to any procedure except for the biopsy. So if you're in like a tumor resection optical instead of the biopsy, you won't have that needle and the camera won't see it. That's a common mistake, is we're rushing, we choose the wrong procedure. If you just back out and choose the proper procedure, everything will be fine. That registration is still there. Any plans or models that have been created are already still there. So let's say we're doing a catheter replacement. So we select cranial, we select our surgeon, and we select catheter placement EM. Same thing, we'll choose our patient, get the scans loaded. They'll probably do that, like once we get to this spot, this is probably where your job will, with the stuff will end. But for the EM, we have two options for the electromagnetic emitting. In an optical procedure, this is what looks for the instruments and sees the instruments and the reference frame. In an EM procedure, this is what does it. Creates a little say beach ball sized electromagnetic field that these instruments interact with. And it depends on the procedure. So like if we're doing a catheter placement or an ENT procedure, we'll be using the EM. If we're pinning, it's going to be the op.
So then where would that hang, or would you just like use it and scan around them and takes imaging, or?
So this, that same arm that we built the reference frame for the optical procedure also has a little bit in here that screws onto the end of the arm, and then it sits in there like this. Now, one thing to warn you about, this is small, it's plastic, it looks disposable. It isn't, don't throw this away. I think Brandon has some extras in his office, but these have a tendency to go missing. And if we don't have this, we can't use this. No, it doesn't. This will all be underneath the grid. And then it has this little bed rail back that holds the arm that then we'll slide it onto the bed rail. They'll do the registration and then it gets very good. I have put a bunch of stickers on here that says return to self, not discard, but they do have a tendency to go missing. So everyone here in this room heard me say it's on record now. We'll have to talk with the rep, sales rep. Usually we just get. Yeah, I think he might have a hand. So there are two different types of this EM emitter, both with the same plug at the end that plugs in the same spot over here on the back side. There is this one, which will usually be used when you're using like a horseshoe. That's used a lot in catheter placements, shunts, etc. And then there's also this one over here that lives in a pelican case that's also stored back by where the stomachs. This is called the flat emitter. This will go on the bed underneath the head of the patient. This is typically used when they're not doing a horseshoe. 95% of ENT procedures they'll use this one.
And that's all the stuff.
Okay, yeah, just flat emitter. You know, a lot of times we'll put like a control pad here to like help alleviate strain on the shoulders, and then you can put like a donut foam or gel donut that's rolled up like this. Yeah. Ideally, the closer the back of the head or the side of the head or something is to the surface, the better. Like, don't make a big old stack that they're then, because this thing only creates a bubble about that big. And so then when they've got an instrument that's being held off of the patient and the tracking part of it is like up here, it's hard for this to see it, and we start getting trouble verifying instruments, something like that. So don't make a big old stack, but yeah, you can put a gel pad or a rolled up blanket or a foam donut or something like that on here. And again, this plugs into the back over here, goes underneath the head of the patient. When you're positioning the patient, if you want to line like the ear canal up, right, there's like a little crosshair, it looks like on here. If you want to line the ears up with this line, that puts typically where they're working right in the center of the hole. When you're doing EM, you want to keep as much metal away from it as possible. If like when we have this all set up and registered, even if you bring a cell phone in close to it, you can watch the error metric grow. So if you bring a Mayo stand in over it, it really messes it up. So when you're doing an EM procedure, keep the like the anesthesia tube holder thing away from it, keep Mayo stands away from it. We've even seen certain instruments like retractors and whatnot that are in the field cause a little bit of interference. So if we're on the bed like this, you can have the Mayo like don't have it like right or like next to it over here on the side of the bed. Yeah. No, I mean there are some titanium instruments that sometimes get brought out, but typically like retractors and stuff like that don't cause enough interference to be an issue. It's just when you have a bunch of them around, and they'll notice it because it basically makes the navigation inaccurate, and they'll definitely notice. And that's the first thing when you're in an EM case. Everything was fine when you registered, and now you're in surgery and it's inaccurate. Find the metal and get it away. That's typically the cause. So that is the EM emitter, either the flat one or the side emitter that goes on the arm and on the bed rail. And then these are examples of the things that will plug into the breakout box here. These little ends. Yeah, and you just plug it in like so. It doesn't matter which one you plug it into. They'll go in any one of them. Like the pointer doesn't have to go in number one, and the reference frame or the reference sticker doesn't have to go in. Yeah, just plug it in. Yeah, you can sit it on the side of the rail of the bed, or if they just have this close to the head, a lot of times they'll just leave it where it lives on the back of here and just stretch the cords across.
And
Yeah, materials stocks these. I'm not sure exactly where they live. PCT1. Yep. Yes, that's that would be if this was being used for the same type of procedures that you'd be using in the future. Yeah, they're the exact same instruments. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these are what's that? Only one for but yeah, exact same as the fusion, except now we have this flattening instead of that. Yeah, and there's plans in the work to get another one, but we all know how quickly that happens. So yeah. Okay. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's much older and it looks very good. Yeah, well, we've got some mileage on it. So we've got we get set up for an optical and an EM procedure. Some common trouble. Oh, so if for some reason we can't download images off the network and they bring a disk, the disk is also, or the disk drive is also in that little cubby where the keyboard is kept. And that was kind of added after the fact in the design process. So it's this flimsy little drive. So when you put this in here and you slam it closed, be careful that you don't like kind of push down on it as you slam it closed, because that disc then kind of like lifts up and gets wedged in the little housing unit here, and then everything's broken.
Consider a USB slot.
There are USB slots in case we want to also, and when you plug in the put it in the blue one. That's the one that transfers fastest, but you can put it in any one of them. When you're on this images screen and you put a disk or a USB drive in, it automatically recognizes that and it brings it up for you to download the images. When you're on this images tab, if we already have the patient, we know we have the patient on this stealth, we don't have to download anything. Up here at the top, there are a few tabs. It defaults to network where you download. If it's already on the stealth, click this stealth button, and then that's all of the patients the files that are already on this. And then a pro tip: anything that is in all caps is actually a button that you can interact. It's not apparent that is the case. It's over designed and under engineered. So right here it says manage patient data in all caps. If I click that, it'll then bring up all of the patients on here where I can delete and whatnot. Don't worry about doing any of that. That's done during PM, but that's just an example of anything that's in all caps is the button. So if you're on a patient and they've registered and everything and power outage or wrong procedure, we have to exit out and go back in, there is a previous registrations button that's in all caps, and you would select the previous registration if there is more than one. A lot of times they'll do registration. I didn't like that. I think we can do better. They'll do another registration, and then when you go back in, you have to choose the one that you want. That's just previous registrations, and they select. Again, this is stuff that that's more the end, like the surgeon would be doing that. But just so you know, anything that has all caps is a button. Are there any questions? No, I kind of blew through that pretty quick. Cleaning, yes. Don't use any of those on the screen. You can do that on the instruments and everything. Don't do that on the screen. It really damages that. Just water on the screen if you can. And it's not, if you do it a handful of times, it's not going to be an issue. It's over the life of the system. If you're rubbing those chemicals on there, it really messes with the touch screen. And then, these get sterilized just like any instrument. A lot of times, if they're doing an optical procedure and when they're registering, it won't, if it's not seeing the reference frame or the pointer here, there are extra spheres usually tucked in one of these cubbies or drawers or somewhere. You can swap out spheres, because when these stay on here for a long time, when you get some facilities. Yeah. Some places leave this.
That's not specifically in the policy, but so if there's anything on the requirement that you feel the need to have, then do it. So the ones willing to get fed have something that you feel like need to be done. Or no one should. I'll that was on the right? You were supposed to say it out loud.
It's on record now. Any other questions? Oh, if you're in the middle of a procedure and you just are completely helpless, some questions come up, some problem, and we don't know how to fix it. The 24/7 tech support is right there. My card was on this. I will always try to help if I can, but like my job is not to sit around on for a phone call. Sometimes I'm in a case or driving and I can't answer the phone. There's someone there 24/7. And they've heard every question you can possibly think of. I'll tell you about it. That's the horseshoe. Oh, yeah. Sure. Yes. It attaches to the plug right here. Yep.
Return this the way that we found it. We've already had a scenario where, for whatever reason, this emitter wasn't on the machine. We didn't even use it. It was actually over there, but they thought we misplaced it, but we didn't. So just it's on there, and just leave it. Don't take things off, and we don't need to.
Yeah, and there's a little bar right there that just.
Yeah, and we haven't always reused this. I imagine if we have a big crane, we'll be getting, it'll get all.
And we would do if she does like a VP shot on call, she will use this. We would do. We've done a couple of shots with her. I don't know with call purposes over the weekend, but I do know her and Clark moved this system as well.
Yeah.
Just that.
And stunts are, I've seen it be 50/50 on if they use a horse feeding this or just do it like an ENT procedure where they'll have it on the bed and flat.
Two that I've seen with Kudu in the car, they did a horseshoe and yes, side piece, even though Quincy did it the other way. Just that is how I've seen both of them do it.
If you're familiar, usually
There's one other in service that we have today. Just two.
I know. I'm making your guys' brain hurt today. I don't know why I